Please at this time silence your cell phones. And for today's song and Pledge of Allegiance, Jeff Sims.
Thank you very much. We are going to sing My Country, 'Tis of Thee, it's officially called America. Gordon, if you will. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom reign. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Now, if we have any visiting Rotarians and guests. Oh, man, sorry, long time. Invocation, Ernie Hole from the Salvation Army.
I said, okay, well, maybe he didn't want me to pray after all. It's the most important part of the meeting for me. Let's pray. Dear God, we bless you today for this opportunity that we have to meet together as a community of leaders. We seek your bountiful blessings on all that we do. God, I pray that you will be merciful towards us and that your favor will always rest upon us in this club. I pray that you will anoint our hands in the work that we do, that it might be glorifying to you. May your favor make us strong to conquer all that we put our hands to. Now, God, we ask your blessings upon our meal today as we fellowship around this table. Amen.
Thank you, Ernie. And now, visiting Rotarians and guests.
Hello, Rotarians. It gives me great pleasure to introduce two guests today. We have Nash Cooper and Sherry O'Brien that are visiting our club. And Nash has been here before, so we welcome him back.
Stop cheating. It's my pleasure to introduce Beth Farabee. Sorry, okay. Beth Snar.
I recently got married. Thank you.
Okay. Beth is my guest today. She is a senior pastor at First United Methodist Church. She's been in that position for 7.5 years. First UMC is just up, as she said, a stone's throw north of us. She is an FSU graduate with elementary education and a graduate of Duke University with a Master of Divinity, right? And so please welcome Beth.
Thank you.
All righty, we have a couple of
announcements. We got more, buddy. I want to introduce Zoe and Lillian, both from the Florida Alligator, doing a story today. Welcome.
Any more visiting Rotarians or guests? Fantastic. We have a couple announcements today. Start with Scott Winsler has an announcement for us.
Thank you, John. I'm here to represent the Ethics in Business Award Committee. You know, each year our club offers this distinguished award to a business or a business owner within our community that demonstrates the high ideals of Rotary and the highest ideals of ethics within their business. The Ethics in Business Award has been issued each year in conjunction with the Greater Gainesville Chamber of Commerce since 2011. As I said, the award honors and recognizes individuals and businesses in the community that exemplify the ideals of Rotary, demonstrating strong commitment to the highest ethical practices and facets of in all the facets of the business. The strength of our nominations are the strength of the award is in the strength of the nominations. And I encourage all club members, as well as friends of club members, as well as people in your networks, to think of a business or an individual business owner who exemplifies Rotary's commitment to ideals and high ethical standards, and make a nomination. You can get a nomination form by downloading it from DAC-TV, or you can just simply email me and I will send you one. Anyone can make a nomination, not just club members. The deadline for submission is November the 3rd. Nominees will then be interviewed by a team of students. They're called Ethic Ambassadors from the Warrington School of Business, who will make a recommendation to our committee. Our committee will consider the recommendation and make a final selection. Then in January, the award is presented to our club, and in February, it's represented again at the Chamber's annual meeting.
Thank you, Scott. We have another announcement. Past President Gregg, come on down.
Thank you, John and Bill. So following up on the announcement we just heard from Scott, this is also approaching the deadline for the Service Above Self Award, which we give annually. It's a very prestigious award in our club and community. I hope you will give that a strong consideration because the deadline is coming up this Friday. We have some nominations already. We're looking for the pool of nominees, as Scott said. The strength of the nominees encourages the quality of the award itself. So please be thinking of someone you would like to nominate in the community. You can, again, it doesn't have to be a Rotarian by any means, someone in the community that their personal service, as opposed to necessarily the business, these are the two awards we give every year, the ethics in business and service above self. So this is more of a person's dedication to the community themselves. And so please give that consideration for this Friday. Again, you can contact me directly, or I believe it's also available on DAC-TV to be downloaded as well. So thank you, and please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And now I'd like to bring up President Linda, the moment we've all been waiting for.
All right, thanks everybody. First of all, I want to thank John for stepping in for Colleen, who is gallivanting around Italy as we speak. So, you know, I'm sure we all feel really sorry for her, but I'm glad she's off having a good time. I also want to congratulate John for another accomplishment. He completed a half Ironman this weekend in Savannah. It's a 1.2 mile swim, a 55-mile bike ride, and a 13.1 mile run. So congratulations on that. That's a heck of an accomplishment. But with 2 minutes to spare, thank you, Jason. Sorry, I forgot that very important detail. Also, I want to remind everybody, Fun and Fellowship this Thursday, the 28th, 5:30 p.m. at the Ronald McDonald House. As you all know, we had Sherry here last week, gave a great presentation on the new house, and so she's going to be showing it off to us this Thursday at 5:30. You can sign up on DAC-TV or just shoot either TJ or myself an email if you're going to be there so that we can plan accordingly. With that, I have the great pleasure to introduce a very special presentation that we're doing today. So I'm going to ask Nash Cooper to come up to the podium.
Thank you so much. This is a surprise to perhaps many of you, and especially it will be once the full details are revealed to Brendan shortly. Guests, friends, dignitaries, special guests who knew Thomas, and of course, Rotarians. Welcome to this segment to honor a dedicated volunteer to Helping Hands in his community, where he truly served through his own helping hands. Matthew 5:9 tells us, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." When most hear those words, perhaps thinking in terms of war and fighting, consider the battle within. A daily fight, most win that battle, yet far too many, as Thomas, do not. September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. I want to personally thank you, Rotarians here today, and your leadership for the multiple program notes on this topic for this special month. Did you know that in the age category from 10 to 34, suicide is the second leading cause of death in these United States? Ponder that. From Charles Dickens, it was the worst of times, it was the best of times. This speaks to different experiences, light and dark, up and down, winning in life, and most sadly, sometimes losing life itself. Many endure and struggle in poverty of their own spirit. Blessed are the peacemakers. My late friend, Thomas Anderson, was one who served to bring peace to troubled souls, be they inner city youth or a once homeless veteran whom you see before you today in better times. Thomas volunteered most of his collegiate career while earning 3 degrees in pursuit of medical school. That chance would not come. Today, we honor his legacy, his young life, as he helped those through the clinic and others like myself privately as a friend, a servant in the greater cause. He helped others. In his off time, he once told me, helping people sometimes is messy. He was willing to get in that fight and to help as best he could, to help us broker our own peace from within our own battles. Helping Hands Clinic serves a marvelous purpose. You should be proud with Brendan today. As I see it, they are helping to bring peace to the medical and hurting needs of the least among us, near homeless, impoverished, and street homeless. I was one of them. Those volunteers, they do their best. One other announcement in tandem with these things today, and the donation that I'm about to make, is I'm seeking to commission, through petitioning the United States Postal Service, to do the very first, as far as my cursory research has indicated, the very first stamp that would bring awareness to suicide prevention. May this donation that I'm about to make in Thomas' name underscore his legacy and the work in fighting the good fight. While he may have lost his own battle, he certainly helped me and so many others in winning in the face of their many battles. Thomas was a peacemaker. Brandon, you too are a peacemaker. Thank you for your great and tireless work that you do through the clinic. Friends, consider joining me to welcome and bring Brandon up here so I can present a check in honor of a Helping Hands volunteer, Thomas Anderson. Please, Brandon, can you come up?
This was totally unexpected, and I'm a little flustered right now. But this day is all about Eric Thomas. He was one of our volunteers for many years. Later in life, over in New Orleans, he did commit suicide. That's what Nash was talking about. We love him. We dedicate our Volunteer of the Year award every year to him. That's the background for this. And this check is for $10,000, everybody.
thank you so much. Upon your departure, I have a guest book that I'm asking if you're in supportive of the concept of a Thomas Step to bring awareness to suicide prevention, please consider signing that. Ultimately, when there are enough signatures, I want to present it to Senior Senator Rubio for his recommendation to the U.S. Postal Service. Thank you so much. God bless each and every one of you.
All right. What a great day, and we're so honored that Nash asked to make that presentation at our meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over and ask Melanie Shore to come up and introduce our speaker for today.
It's nice to be back at the podium with you all. I kind of miss my year doing this every week, but I'm so excited about our program today. I get to introduce a colleague and a dear friend, Stephanie Marchman, a little bit about her. Stephanie's a shareholder in Gray Robinson's Gainesville office. Her practice focuses on representing public and private sector employees in all aspects of labor and employment law. A little bit about her past. After earning her undergraduate law degrees with honors, of course, from University of Florida, she served as a clerk to someone many of you know, the Honorable William Terrell Hodges, a very beloved judge and in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Florida. And following her clerkship, she practiced with the Tampa-based labor and employment firm Thompson, Sizemore, Gonzalez, and Hearing. And then she served as in-house labor and employment counsel for the city of Gainesville for over a decade. Stephanie does a lot, so I'm not at all surprised that this is the beginning of the introduction. But most importantly today, she's a member of the Florida Bar Board of Governors. And earlier this year, I was very honored to be asked to serve alongside Stephanie as one of the public members of this governing board. So Stephanie is going to tell you and tell us today a little bit about what the Florida Bar Board of Governors does. So I'm very excited about that. So this is the governing body for Florida's 100,000 plus lawyers. She is also past president of the 8th Judicial Circuit Bar Association and North Central Florida chapter of the Federal Bar Association. I want to make sure I get this all right. And the past chair of the Florida Bar's Federal Court Practice Committee and 8th Judicial Circuit Grievance Committee. She was born in Dunedin. She grew up in the Tampa area. She moved to Gainesville to attend the University of Florida. She lived in Gainesville for over 25 years, and she's married to Brian Marchman, Dr. Marchman, and he is actually the superintendent and director of PK Young, and it's actually PK Young Developmental Research School. I guess you all know that, but I wanted to add that. And most importantly, they are the proud parents of 2 wonderful children, Marina, who is 14, and Landon, who is 11. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you Stephanie Marchman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Are you sure you want to yield the microphone to an attorney? I understand I have 180 minutes. I'm going to, in painstaking detail, go through the rules regulating the bar. No, I'm teasing. We're gonna, I have a presentation. Just briefly, we'll talk a little bit about the Florida Bar, which is the regulating body for all the lawyers in Florida. As Melanie mentioned, she recently joined the Board of Governors with me. What she didn't mention is she went through a competitive process and was appointed by the Florida Supreme Court. And the board has 52 members, 2 public members, and it is an extreme honor to have Melanie serving and representing the Gainesville area on the board. We only have 1 elected representative from Gainesville, which is myself, representing the 1,100 lawyers in the 8th Circuit, and now I have a friend, another friend from Gainesville on the board, and it's so lovely to have Melanie serving alongside me. In terms of the Florida Bar and the mission of the Florida Bar, these are basically the core principles of the bar. The bar regulates the practice of law in Florida. We ensure the highest standards of legal professionalism in Florida, and we protect the public by prosecuting unethical attorneys and preventing the unlicensed practice of law. So I'm going to give you a couple, through the presentation, a couple of examples of how that carries out. But first, I did want to mention that the Florida Bar is an arm of the Florida Supreme Court, so it's a state entity. The agency, the Florida Bar, is located, its headquarters is in Florida. There are regional offices throughout the state, and the bar actually has over 300 employees. If we can go to the next slide. Actually, I have a clicker. Somebody gave me. I think I can do that. Look at that. Okay. So a snapshot of the Florida Bar. These are recent statistics. As Melanie mentioned, over 100,000 lawyers in the state of Florida are licensed to practice law. In my mind, that's not enough. I love the legal profession. Law students or undergraduate students ask me all the time, you know, they're trying to decide what they want to do, if they want to go to law school. And my view is the legal profession is a noble profession, one of the noblest professions. And in essence, what we do as lawyers, and this is my experience, we solve problems that individuals and institutions cannot solve by themselves. I mean, that's what we all do, and that's our focus. In terms of one of the things I wanted to point out about this slide was most lawyers are affiliated with either their own firm or very small firms. So I think it's something like 70% of the bar is with a small law office. I'm affiliated now with a law firm called Gray Robinson. We have about 300 attorneys statewide, but to be with a firm my size is pretty unusual. I would say in the Gainesville area, we're the only firm of our size. Most of the firms, and I'm sure many of you have interacted with lawyers in the Gainesville area, but are small firms. So in terms of sort of focusing on our circuit, this is a map of the different judicial circuits, which are set by the Florida Supreme Court within the state of Florida. And we are in the 8th Judicial Circuit, which covers Alachua, Baker, Bradford, Gilchrist, Levy, and Union counties. As I mentioned, we have about 1,100 lawyers in our circuit. We have one lawyer representative, which is myself at the present time. Prior to me, this is my 7th year on the board, was Carl Schwait. I think many of you probably know Carl, but he retired and kindly asked me to run for his seat. And we have 52 members, 2 public members. I did want to mention the Florida Bar Board of Governors. All of us, all of the lawyer members are volunteers. So I spend approximately 550 hours a year carrying out my duties at the Florida Bar. So we meet 6 or 7 times a year to do the business of the bar, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means. We meet throughout the state. We have one out-of-state meeting a year as well. Melanie and I were just in Austin, Texas this month for our out-of-state meeting. Why do we meet out-of-state? Because we have a lot of out-of-state members too. So we usually do one meeting out-of-state. And we also all the lawyers pay for their travel expenses to all these meetings. So my travel expenses, these meetings are about $10,000 a year. So it is definitely a passion and a commitment to serve in this capacity. So I just wanted to share that with you all. Here we are. This is the board getting sworn in June at the Florida Bar Convention, taking the oath. The Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court is swearing us in. You can see Melanie I think in the left-hand side. I'm in the middle. I will tell you, one of the reasons why I enjoy serving on this board is because of my colleagues on the board. These attorneys and the public members are the cream of the crop, the best of the brightest, and it is just such a pleasure to serve alongside with them and do the work of the bar. So what are we doing to protect and serve the public? I want to give you 2 high-level examples. So the first is addressing lawyer misconduct. So this is primarily what we do. This is the 550 hours, what I'm spending my time on, especially since I'm the only one in our circuit. If we get a complaint of lawyer misconduct, so this is a lawyer violating one of our rules of professional conduct that the Florida Supreme Court has approved, So you think about conflicts of interest, not communicating with your client, not taking on a matter that you're not competent to handle, stealing money. I mean, any of those types of rule violations start with a complaint. The complaint could come from a client, commonly comes from a client, but also a judge. We have a special process to deal with judicial complaints, and it could come from another lawyer. So if I'm in litigation and I see a lawyer violating the rules, I actually have a professional obligation to report the lawyer to the board or to the bar. I had to do it once. Nobody else in my office wanted to do it. So I did it because we're required to do it, and participate in the process. So you get a complaint. The complaint undergoes some initial review by bar staff, but ultimately lands on the table of a grievance committee. So in the 8th Circuit, we have 2 grievance committees. The grievance committees are made up of lawyer members and members of the public. And actually, we have a new public member that's a member of your Rotary. David, will you stand up? He just joined the grievance committee, the recommendation of Melanie Shore. So very thankful for his service, because it's really important for members of the public to be involved in this process and to give their input as to what their view is of what the lawyer did and how it affects members of the public. So the grievance committee meets, and an investigating member is assigned. They investigate the allegations of misconduct and present their findings to the committee, and the committee sort of serves as a grand jury. So they will vote on whether there's probable cause to believe the lawyer violated the rule. If they find probable cause, then it moves on in the process, which the findings will come to me. I just reviewed probable cause finding this morning, and with the staff and the grievance committee chair, and then I have the ability to send it up to the Board of Governors for review. I can also send it back to the grievance committee if I think I want them to look at something else. So this morning I sent it back. I sent it up to the DRC, as what we call the Discipline Review Committee, for a Board of Governor review. And then from there, it goes to a trial by a referee, and the referees are state court judges. So there's a trial. And then the trial court, or the referee, will make findings and recommendations, and that go to the board again, and then it goes ultimately to the Florida Supreme Court. And the Florida Supreme Court is the final authority on what happens with the lawyer. The lawyer so through this process, there's many avenues. So you could have diversion, if it's something minor, first offense, early in the process. We've had a number of situations involving DUIs, where there's an attorney with an alcohol or drug problem, and so we may send them to a program called the Lawyers Assistance Program, so that they can get the assistance that they need and recover and rejoin the practice. You may, for your more serious violations, you may have a public reprimand, you may have a suspension, you may have total disbarment. So those are the types of actions that take place. In terms of the kinds of cases that we see here in Gainesville, I would say the most common is the failure of the lawyer to communicate with their client. So they sign up a client to do something, and the client never hears from them. And so that's an absolute violation of the rule, and the lawyer, will be disciplined. Just had one of those cases. We also see lack of competence, lack of diligence in the representation, and then sometimes more serious conduct like stealing from the client. So money's in the trust account. So that will most definitely result in disbarment, those types of situations. So in terms of the caseload in the 8th Judicial Circuit, we actually don't, David might disagree with me, but we actually don't have a very heavy caseload compared to other circuits. Our circuit is really known for the professionalism, collegiality, competence. It is a complete pleasure to practice in our circuit. Every now and then we do have lawyers that violate the rules, but I would say by and large, we just don't experience that in our circuit. I was sharing with Melanie that our circuit is so represented or so respected that we actually get a lot of conflict cases out of Tallahassee and Jacksonville. So if you see like a high profile situation involving an elected official who's also a lawyer, we get those cases because there's conflicts in Tallahassee, so they send them down to our circuit for consideration and handling. Let's see. The next. So I wanted to share with you this slide. This is actually the court issuing a public reprimand to a lawyer. So I just wanted to play this video for you guys. I think if you just click on the arrow. I think the link is embedded in the notes if you want to click on the notes and pull it up. Oh, I think because you're in Zoom, sharing it is probably why it's not working. I would say just pass it, but the video is really impactful.
Unmute to make sure, but she's muted.
Receive your reprimand.
Yes.
Mr. Norkin, you're here before the court today because of ethical misconduct in your professional life as an attorney. And I must begin by saying how sad a day this is for you, for us, and for the entire Florida Bar. At the most fundamental level, you have repeatedly shown behavior so serious on so many occasions that this court felt it necessary to command you to appear today for a public reprimand. This is a very serious matter, Mr. Norkin. It's very unusual for any lawyer to be reprimanded in person before the Supreme Court. That fact alone underscores the gravity of your situation. The effectiveness of our legal system ultimately rests on the trust and confidence that the people confer upon the attorneys who practice in our courts. And that trust and confidence is seriously undermined by the grossly unprofessional actions you have exhibited. That is why we have ordered you to appear today for a public reprimand that's being broadcast throughout the state. It is one way we can assure the public that we take the lack of professionalism by a lawyer very seriously, and that we will not hesitate to punish errant attorneys in the most public way. Mr. Norkin, this court, in its opinion, has found that you have continued to engage in rude and antagonistic behavior in judicial proceedings despite repeated warnings from judges. You have disrupted proceedings to such an extent that it was impossible for the presiding judges to conduct hearings, and the transcripts are very clear on these points. Despite the record evidence against you, Mr. Norkin, you have denied the patent lack of respect you have shown to others involving in these matters. Further, you have falsely accused a senior judge of having a conspiratorial relationship with opposing counsel, an allegation that, if true, could have subjected that judge to ethical or criminal investigation. And the referee hearing your case concluded that these allegations not only were false, but that you knew them to be false, and you used them in an effort to obtain an advantage. Your conduct toward opposing counsel has been equally egregious. You have subjected counsel to harsh treatment and justified the actions solely because of the conflicting interest of your client and the opposing client. No attorney is justified in such conduct because, as the guidelines for professional conduct state, effective and zealous representation does not require antagonistic or acrimonious behavior. Even in the present disciplinary case, Mr. Norkin, you have disrupted several hearings by yelling at judges and exhibiting other disrespectful conduct. Yet this is only a part of a pattern of similar unprofessional conduct you have shown in other cases as well. In fact, you previously have been reprimanded for the same category of misbehavior that brings you before this court today. The fact that you have reoffended weighs heavily against you, Mr. Norkin. The tirades and antagonism you have shown in this and other forums has persuaded us to reject the referee's recommendation of a 90-day suspension. Your escalating pattern of abuse and unprofessional conduct will and must come to an end. Accordingly, we have imposed a sanction of 2-year suspension, thereby requiring you to prove rehabilitation before you can be restored to full membership of the Florida Bar. For these failings, Mr. Norkin, you are hereby publicly reprimanded for your misconduct, and a suspension is imposed upon you in the manner described in this court's opinion. You're now free to leave. This court is in recess for 10 minutes.
So I share that video because I think that I think it's important for the public to know how seriously the court takes lawyer misconduct, and not just things like stealing from their clients or doing, engaging in criminal behavior. But as you heard in this case, this lawyer was rude, harsh, disrupted proceedings. The court has taken a very strong position against lawyers engaging in this kind of conduct over the last several years. And I have no idea why Mr. Norkin was smiling during that proceeding. I will tell you that he has now been permanently disbarred. There was a lawyer, in fact, when I was a young lawyer with the city of Gainesville, who engaged in similar behavior, and he likewise was disbarred. And I was a witness in that case, or a recipient of the behavior. So the court and the bar does not tolerate that kind of behavior, which, and I couldn't imagine if you were Mr. Norkin's client, for example. I mean, certainly that type of behavior doesn't help your clients. So that's sort of the one of the main things that we do is lawyer discipline. I did want to mention access to justice. These are just a few slides about the problem with people in poverty and their lack of access to legal services. So many people cannot afford the legal services that they need. Landlord-tenant law, family law are really the primary areas. And the bar is really working hard in the court to address what we call this sort of gap, the access to justice gap. So here are some of the figures with respect to the population that doesn't have access to legal services. And you know, they may not, because of they're making too much money to qualify for legal aid. So we're really working on lots of ideas to try to bridge that gap. So like one example would be, you know, unbundling of legal services, all these forms that we have for family court. We have a self-help clinic in the local civil court for people to get a divorce and deal with the custody arrangements. So we're really trying to help people do these things themselves. I did want to mention a rule change that went through that I thought you all would be interested in, especially those of you who are in the banking industry. The Florida Supreme Court, well, let me move back. Lawyers are required to keep their clients' funds in trust until whatever time it's appropriately to distribute the funds, and the bar has rules over, the Florida Supreme Court has rules about those trust funds. And one of the rules relates to any interest on those funds goes to legal aid. So the court just recently changed the rule requiring lawyers to very simplistically, place their trust funds in banks that have a higher interest rate. And as a result of that rule change, which by the way, came at the idea of one of our public members of the Board of Governors, this is Jody Hudgens, who's a banker. He had this idea and the court implemented it. And so it was just implemented recently. So this quarter, we actually have $36 million more for legal aid as a result of this rule change. And so that money will get distributed by the Florida Bar Foundation, which is a direct support organization of the Florida Bar, to all legal aid throughout the state of Florida. So it's really quite incredible. And that came at the idea of a public member. What else do? We do a lot of rule work. So we have the rules of civil procedure, the rules of criminal procedure, the rules regulating the bar. So all of those rule changes come through the Board of Governors. I have the pleasure as being the vice chair of one of the rules committees right now. So if you ever want to debate me on where a comma goes and what's appropriate or not, we can have that debate. What else do? We support Florida lawyers. So a lot of continuing education programs. We have a free hotline for lawyers that need mental health assistance. We have a free helpline for tech support. So you remember I said most of our lawyers are small, either solo practitioners or small firms. We have NOTA, that's a new software, that's a trust accounting software that complies with the rules, that's free for lawyers. Legal Fuel, that's all like continuing education, law practice management, all free programming for our lawyers. And then lastly, what I see as a really big role of the Florida Bar is to really protect the independence of the judicial system. So the state court judges cannot lobby on their behalf, so we do it for them. We have a lobbyist and our Florida Bar president and we have a legislation chair. They walk the halls and lobby for the needs of the court. So funding of the judicial system, funding for the judges, the salaries for the staff, all of those folks in the system, the state attorneys, the public defenders, everybody that's part of the justice system. The bar has a big part in advocating for funding for all of those folks. So Florida Bar involvement, I know you're dying to know, how can you get involved? Let me tell you. There's a website, volunteer opportunities. And there's all kinds of committees of the Florida Bar where public members can participate. It's really critical for us to have the public input, as I mentioned. I mean, that rule change came from a public member, but if any of you are interested in serving in any way on the Florida Bar, I mean, here locally, we have the grievance committees where we're always looking for public members to serve. We have the Unauthorized Practice of Law Committee, which have public members, Citizens Advisory Council. We have now, on the board, we have 2 public members. I think Melanie served in almost every one of those roles. I mean, she could certainly tell you about the commitment, but it's such meaningful work and impactful work. And so if you're looking to get involved and give back, this is a wonderful way to do so. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to sign up, you just email me. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Mounts.
Sleeping at the wheel.
Way back when I was a young lawyer, 29 years old, I served briefly as assistant staff counsel in the Miami office of the Florida Bar. And at that time, frankly, in South Florida, I saw more bad lawyers than I could imagine. But the rules of professional conduct were divided into 2 parts at the time: ethical considerations, which were aspirational, and disciplinary rules for which you could be sanctioned or disbarred. Is it still organized like that, or is it just a long set of rules?
Yeah, so the court has changed that so that lawyers can actually be disciplined for violating the professional expectations. It needs to be tied to a rule violation, is my understanding. But lawyers also take an oath of professionalism and civility, and they can be cited for violating that as well. But as I mentioned, and I think that video is evidence now that lawyers are being disciplined for professional misconduct, not just, you had a conflict of interest or lawyer communication, which are the typical rules regulating the bar. Any other questions? Yes.
When a person is arrested, they're told that if they can't afford it, an attorney will be provided for them. Is that part of the bar as well?
So, no, not part of the Florida Bar, but that is that's the public defender system. So that was a decision a long time ago by the courts that under the Constitution, those that are arrested and charged with criminal offenses have a right to a lawyer. And so that's done through the public defender's office and through the court system. I thought you were going to ask if a lawyer's arrested, what happens? So I'll tell you, it gets a point. They're supposed to report it immediately, and I think the bar gets a report too. So actually, there has just been a rule change. If a lawyer is, now Melanie, you might have to help me with this. If a lawyer is, this is like at our last meeting, or maybe the meeting before that, but essentially there's an emergency suspension of a bar license of a lawyer if they're arrested for a felony.
Thank you for the presentation. You're welcome. Are gag orders, limitation of free speech at a national level when addressing a previous president?
Are they legal?
Yes. Are they enforceable? Is a gag order enforceable in today's climate?
Yeah, so they're actually they're very common in litigation. We have protective orders entered in place all of the time. I do civil litigation. I have several cases with protective orders in place right now. The reason that they're in place is to protect confidential information. So, for instance, because I practice employment law and we have non-compete cases, and in those situations, you have confidential business information that are at issue, customer information, and it's routine to have a protective order in place. In the case of the former president, to the extent that it would be, I would think it would be appropriate to have a protective order in place related to the secrets of the country, right? So any of the security, confidential security information and the like. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you, Stephanie, very much for bringing this information. It was very informative. And also just on behalf of the club, we are going to make a donation to the Bread of the Mighty Food Bank in honor for you speaking here today. Thank you very much. Okay, just want to remind you guys, so next week, our speaker will be Johnny Detz from the Florida Museum of Natural History. We also will be having WUFT here next week to try to do the Greater Good segment that they were supposed to tape the day that we had to cancel the meeting for the hurricane. So they're coming back. They'll be here next week as well to participate in that meeting. Let's see, quote of the day. To give real service, you must add something which cannot be bought or measured with money, and that is sincerity and integrity. Douglas Adams. So. And the final piece of business, the Rotary Reading Safari raffle number for the day is 313. 313. With that, meeting is adjourned.